for my most famous invention, my most famous first invention was my nail file. Nail files were traditionally always completely straight. I used the TRIZ trends, and I came up with this idea of a curved shape. I had one that I tested that was a pure boomerang, and that actually wasn't very useful. But the idea of an S shape meant that it fitted in the hand nicer. It followed the natural shape of the nail. You could use the outside of the curve to get closer in underneath the nail. And so this TRIZ methodology inspired that idea. It was then an unbelievable amount of work to actually bring it to market, and it took me a couple of steps. It took me a couple of tries until I then went on The Apprentice and did it like that. And it's still today. So I've been working with Lord Sugar for 12 years, and on Amazon it's still my third best selling product, that curved nail file. It's unbelievable. I've been the curved nail file guy for like 20 years now, and that was inspired by a TRIZ methodology.
This week on the podcast, we're talking about a problem-solving tool used by designers called Smart Little People.
So I've got a lovely example of this, which might be helpful as well. Okay, yeah. So
paint us a picture.
Cleaning a makeup brush. Right? For hundreds of years, people have been cleaning their makeup brushes or cleaning any kind of brushes by putting it in water, dabbing it out, getting their fingers inside, trying to open the bristles up, trying to like flick around, then getting towel and doing that. Okay. So then you kind of go, well, imagine you had millions of smart little people. What would they do? They'd run into the bristles and they'd use their little hands to individually grab all the little bits, and they'd take those away. Right, and they'd open all the bristles up so you could get right into each different bristle. So a makeup brush has got thousands of bristles in there. And so you'd send your thousands or maybe millions of smart little people in, and they'd open up the bristles and they'd use their little hands to pull it around. So I'm thinking, right, a makeup brush, your ideal is that you'd send these people in and they'd do all that little force. Right, well, I don't have little people. So is there another way that I can apply force only to the muck? And how can I open up all the bristles? And actually in that instance, I happened to have a nail drill beside me because I was looking into, this is a motor that spins. I was like, what if I use that to spin the makeup brush? And what that does is it spins the makeup brush on its axis, and then all that makeup and dirt is acted upon by centrifugal force. Which is just like millions of little people going in there to pull the stuff out. And also, every single bristle in itself is spun outwards by the centrifugal force, as if you've got lots of smart little people fanning the brush out for you.
Nice.
So the spinning effect is doing both things that the smart little people would do for you, which is one, opening up all the bristles, and secondly, just taking all the muck, all the dirt, all the bacteria off all those individual ones. And I can't believe that no one had ever thought of doing that before. And possibly it was because of smart little people that made me think, and it was definitely because of use of resources or serendipity. And it was probably a lot to do with serendipity that I had this thing next to me, and I got some sellotape and I put it all together and was like, oh my gosh, this works. And then the blessing in disguise, the amazing thing, was then when I lifted the brush up out of the liquid, it sprayed all over me kind of thing, but it sprayed everything off. And it's like, oh my gosh. And it turned out that actually for people, drying of a makeup brush was actually more important or more difficult than cleaning it in the first place. So it's a combination of loads of things, but it's a very nice framework tool or psychological tool, or and created something that we've now sold millions of.
And you used Smart Little People when you invented that, did you? In your mind, along with other tools.
One of the TRIZ principles is, spinning something or using another dimension. I'm fortunate because I've been using it for 20 odd years. That's just how my brain
That's
works.
Quite cool. It's like driving a car, right? You don't think about foot on clutch, put into gear, release clutch, handbrake, mirror signal, maneuver. You just do it. That's what your brain's doing with TRIZ when you come up against a problem. That's pretty cool, that, Tommy. That's pretty. No wonder your eyes are so manic whenever you're thinking.
So smart little people running around
going through his
inside.
head. Yeah.
Do you know who I picture when we're talking about smart little people? Have you seen Toy Story?
Yes, the army.
You know the little army figures.
Yeah.
I think about them, and the way that I think about smart little people interacting is the way those army figures communicate with each other as well. Where there's
Exactly
the sergeant who's
that.
dishing out the orders. Right, come on, guys, do this.
Yeah,
That's what I think of.
And another great example is Teflon coatings or something on a frying pan.
Yeah.
And you could sort of view that as millions of smart little people with their little, with their shields up, that you can't damage me, you can't get through me. And it was that kind of way of thinking that it's a nice example of that surface coating.
There's the classic example. It came from like copying nature, but the Velcro one, right?
Yeah.
Velcro came from the burrs sticking on the dog's fur, and you're like, oh, well, these little curved burrs sticking on the fur, but Velcro is one of the where you can just imagine. It's like, well, if I have like a surface which is a bit furry, how would I stick this other surface to it? Well, I'd grab on with these hooks, and I'd have loads and loads of these little hooks with these little people grabbing on. And I was thinking, Velcro's a bit like that.
That's brilliant.
And I was thinking about fundamentally we talk about contradictions. It's just something like Gore-Tex, right? Like breathable fabrics are such a classic thing. But first of all, you're massively trying to solve this contradiction, which is I want to keep the water out, but I want to let air through it.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yep.
Keep
the water on the outside. Basically, you want porous, non-porous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want that breathable, but not waterproof. Yeah.
An amazing contradiction there. Is it a classic example of one? And their solution, Johnny?
Well, I don't know what the magic of something like Gore-Tex is, but I just imagine like if I made out of smart little people, I'd be like, okay, let the air through, but stop all the water. How would they do that?
But as you say, when you say it out loud, you're like, that's impossible.
Can't do
and that's what most people probably thought. Well, that's impossible. No one can do that. Let's move on. But then if you look into it a little bit more, an air molecule is a bit smaller than a water molecule. So if you make loads of really small holes, then actually air could come out, especially with heat and with sort of the force of the heat, but water can't get in. And I think also there's something special about the shape of the hole potentially, and when you start getting down to it's an incredible material, but it was probably born from that realization that a contradiction is solvable. It's not just about a trade-off, and secondly, start looking into it in more kind of detail and more nuance.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, and I love how fluently you guys speak about all this as well, because you've got so much experience using it. It's lovely. It's really enjoyable to sit back and listen to. All music on this podcast series is sourced from the very talented Frank Cinelli. And you can find loads more tracks at frankcinelli.com.